What's going on, guys? Welcome back to a brand new episode. Coach Joe here with Heartletics.com, and me and Coach Mark are going to be running you guys through a really good presentation. I'm really excited actually to listen to what Mark has to present for us, talking all about some different supplements, specifically just one supplement. And this is a really good one to take. Now, before Mark takes the ball rolling on this presentation, let me just share a little bit about supplements. I talk about this in probably at least 5 different podcast episodes. Do not get suckered into supplements, right? Thinking that, hey, if somebody out there is saying, hey, take this pill, powder, potion, whatever the case may be, and just because they look good with their shirts off, that's called marketing, okay? There are some great supplements out there. There's some not great supplements out there. But regardless, right? I always like to say it like this: the handful of supplements that are good and great for you, it does anywhere from, I don't know, maybe 5% max of like the ROI that you're going to get in terms of results, right? You have to master the foundation, right? That's your calories, your macronutrients, your training, your sleep, your recovery, everything like that. That is the big bulk of it, But at the end of the day, there are a few good ones. There are some bad ones, right? Like testosterone boosters, I'm not a fan of. Fat loss supplements, I'm not a fan of. Just different things out there that really doesn't do the justice as far as helping somebody improve on their overall body composition and obviously improve on their overall health. But this supplement that Coach Mark is going to dive into, this is a really good one. In fact, it's one of the most researched ones, and I'm really excited to hear the behind the scenes as far as what Mark has to share. So with further ado, let me go ahead and do a screen share here. And Mark, you can take the floor, brother.
Awesome. So let me kind of start off by saying that the impetus for me doing this was I see a lot of questions about creatine, both, within Heartletics and also, outside of Heartletics and just general, fitness groups and things like that. And, a lot of people have concerns about the safety of it, whether to take it, when to take it, et cetera. So I wanted to kind of address, first of all, the safety of it, and then explain what it is, what it does. And I thought I'd start off by saying what it's not. Creatine is not a steroid. There's a lot of misconceptions about that out there. It's a naturally occurring substance within your body. And what you're doing by supplementing with it is just replenishing it. It's found throughout your body, but 95% of it is stored in your muscles. So in terms of safety, the International Society of Sports Nutrition has regarded creatine as extremely safe. It's one of the most, as Coach Joe said, well-researched supplements that there is. And it's also one of the most beneficial supplements that there is. One study examined 69 health markers after the participants took creatine for about 21 months, and it found no adverse effects. It's also been used to treat, diseases and health concerns like neuromuscular disorders, concussions, diabetes, muscle loss. So it's deemed very safe. And as far as effectiveness, one 14-week study determined in older adults that adding creatine to a weight training program significantly increased leg strength, muscle mass. A 12-week study in weightlifters, showed that it increased muscle fiber growth 2 to 3 times more. Increase in total body mass also doubled alongside, the 1 rep max for bench presses, which is a common, benchmark, no pun intended, exercise. And then, when you review all the supplements out there, like Coach Joe was saying, most different researches and most different programs select creatine as the single most effective supplement for adding muscle mass. So it's well researched, it's well used, and it's well proven to be an effective supplement. So the Mayo Clinic, when looking at creatine, determined that strength, muscle size, and performance in that area, using creatine allows an athlete to do more work during their reps, which leads to greater gains in muscle strength, size, performance. And it's often used by athletes involved in high intensity intermittent activities for rapid recovery and training. It's used for injury prevention, right? Oral creatine reduces frequency of dehydration, muscle cramping, muscle injuries, etc. It's helpful for cognition in terms of brain health. It improves performance during cognitive tasks, especially in older adults. And it's good for bone health. It may help counteract age-related declines in skeletal muscle, bone mineral density. And it basically improves strength, power, and high intensity exercise performance. In one review, adding creatine to a training program increased strength by 8%, weightlifting performance by 14%. So it's just a beneficial all-around supplement. In well-trained strength athletes, 28 days of supplementing increased something like bike sprinting by 15%. So it helps maintain strength and performance and increases muscle size and mass. So the noticeable improvements are primarily caused by your body's increased capacity to produce ATP, which is a normal part of the energy cycle. Normally, ATP becomes depleted after about 10 seconds of high intensity activity. But creatine supplements help you produce more ATP so you can maintain that optimal performance for a little longer. And in this picture here, you can see, right, ATP, becomes ADP when it's broken down, and then it, gets reformed back into ATP. It's an ongoing cycle, and we're going to talk about how creatine fits into that. So how does creatine work? When you supplement, you increase your stores of phosphocreatine, and that's the way the body stores creatine. And it's stored as a form of energy in cells, and this helps your body produce more ATP. So when you're doing high intensity exercise, the role is to increase the phosphocreatine stores in your muscles. And this helps you by boosting your workload, right? It enables more total work or volume, improved cell signaling. So this means it improves satellite cell signaling, which aids in muscle repair, new muscle growth. It raises anabolic hormones such as IGF-1, when you take creatine, and it increases cell hydration. So creatine basically lifts the water content within your muscle cells, and that causes cell volumization. Basically, bigger cells, and that plays a role in muscle growth. It helps reduce protein breakdown. So it may, increase total muscle mass by reducing muscle breakdown. This is particularly relevant for us, where a lot of us are trying to lose weight without losing muscle. So that's an important factor there. And it lowers the myostatin levels, which those can slow or inhibit new muscle growth. So supplementing with creatine helps reduce those, so also helps with the growth potential. Creatine supplements also increase the phosphocreatine stores within the brain as well. So that can help with brain health and improve symptoms of neurological diseases. So to get a little more specific, right? For short, intense exercise, your muscles need a lot of energy in a short time. And at the beginning of any such anaerobic exercise, meaning independent of oxygen, the muscles rely on the energy sources that are immediately available. So these exist in the form of adenosine triphosphate, which is the ATP, and creatine phosphate. And what you see here is ATP and creatine phosphate act as energy deposits, like a battery, right? So they help bridge the time until the biodegradation of glucose, right? Glycolysis, and glycogen and fat released further energy into the body. So they're kind of like the holding pattern, until those get released. And what you're seeing here is that ADP, right, donates this phosphate molecule to help become ATP. And we'll talk about that in a minute. So let's go to the next slide. Yeah. So ATP is the energy needed for all biological processes. And the ATP molecule has 3 phosphate groups. That's the triphosphate. So if ATP breaks down a phosphate group, energy released now enables muscle function. So that's the whole nature of how ATP is used to kind of generate the energy for the muscles. And then after it does that, what's left is the ADP. And then the body converts that ADP back to ATP using the energy present in food or supplements or whatever it may be. But this process takes longer and only produces enough ATP to last for a few seconds. So the body can generate ATP levels more quickly if the muscle performance required is longer and more intense. So when a muscle is at rest, about 2/3 of its creatine capacity is available in the form of this creatine phosphate. And that contains this additional phosphate group. So even before the hardworking muscles run low on ATP, there's an enzyme called creatine kinase. And what that does is it takes the phosphate group, right, to the ADP, and transfers it and converts it back to ATP. So creatine is important because that's how the ADP becomes ATP again to use for your energy. And that only lasts as long as sufficient levels of phosphocreatine are present. So that's why we supplement with creatine, because this gets used up in, while you're exercising, and you want to make sure you build up those stores in your muscles. This allows the muscles to work anaerobically, meaning without, the oxygen cycle, until this creatine phosphate, source becomes scarce, until you're running out. And again, that's why we supplement. During the next resting phase, right, the creatine that was created is now converted back to creatine phosphate by the addition of this phosphate group coming back. And then once the supply is, returned to its initial levels, then you can continue to provide ATP during the next round. So it's an ongoing cycle, basically ATP, going to ADP and back vice versa, all through the use of creatine, to make that conversion possible. As far as dosage, right? So when you're supplementing with creatine, you're basically maintaining the stores depleted during the exercise. And the recommended dosage is 5 grams a day. And oftentimes when you look at creatine packaging, it's recommending what's called a loading period of like 15 to 20 grams, in that initial period. Here at Heartletics, we don't recommend that loading phase. We recommend that you just start at the 5 grams per day. The reason for this is, as I mentioned before, one of the things that creatine does is draw water into the muscle cells. And so here, as where a lot of us are, looking to burn body fat and are, monitoring our weight, et cetera, that extra water weight can be a little discouraging when it all floods in at once for that higher loading phase. So we recommend just starting and staying at the 5 grams a day. And that way, you're not going to see that sort of surge of water weight. And really, the results will be the same because you're just basically building up those stores in your body. So maybe it'll take you slightly longer to build up those stores, but you won't have that that water retention. And that's really the way creatine works. That's why it's a useful, beneficial supplement. And that's why it's one of the most recommended supplements out there, because it's already a part of your energy cycle to keep yourself strong and powerful during your workouts. And we're just replenishing it to keep you going.
I love it. Love it. That was the science that I was looking for, because I wanted to learn more about that. And you said it so specifically, Mark, where it was easy for me to understand. I love also how you talked about the loading. So I'll say it like this: for our members, yeah, we don't recommend that because we're trying to mainly lose body fat, right? Lose weight. And I would say if somebody's a kid trying to put on muscle, right, and get bigger and bulkier, that's different, right? Obviously, I would recommend for them maybe doing that loading, but it can definitely be discouraging because you're storing more body, water and everything like that, to where it's, if you're looking at the number on the scale, taking your measurements, it could be discouraging. Also, because during that loading process, you will be bloated. You're going to feel puffier face and whatnot, right? You're going to have, more bloat going on, more than normal. And so it's typically best to, just like what Mark said, stick with 5 grams, a day. Personally, for me, after, how you kind of mentioned, Mark, how your body stores it, there's a lot of truth to that. So I would say after a few short weeks of taking it 5 grams daily, you can weed off of it and only take it on your training days. And this is where I want to get into some helpful tips as far as just recommendations on what has worked best for me. So when it comes to taking creatine, everything that Mark talked about with the ATP and, getting more energy, I want you guys to just visually understand it like this, right? A sprinter, right? That last little bit of energy that he needs, let's say he's running out, right? A sprinter, that's where, boom, his body's going to utilize that creatine storage more importantly. Let's say if you're bench pressing, right? And let's say typically it's 225 pounds and you're getting there for normally 5 reps. Well, the creatine might help make those 5 reps a lot easier or help you get a little bit more reps. So if you look in that term, it's why it's beneficial, because it's helping you with progressive overload. That's obviously going to lead off into building more lean muscle tissue, speed up your metabolic rates, burning more body fat overall. Things like squats, deadlifts, those explosive movements, that is where we're going to use creatine. Understand this too, just so everybody is aware. It's not a supplement that has a stimulus effect, right? It's not like a pre-workout where you take it, you're going to feel all jittery. It's just like something like ashwagandha, where it's working internally within the body, but you're not actually going to feel it. So I think that's good for everybody to know. And yeah, I mean, as far as, taking it, I recommend if you're in the gym doing compound lifts, or you're, at home working out with some weights and you're really crushing it, recommend taking it for sure, especially if you're somebody that's looking to improve on overall building more lean muscle tissue, building more strength. It's beneficial. If you're somebody that's doing more circuits or not necessarily doing the weightlifting, I wouldn't recommend it as being hey, I need to take this supplements by any means, because you could pretty much just get away without taking it at all. But at the end of the day, regardless if you're taking it or not, supplements is once again just the tip of the iceberg here. And the whole overall foundation of everything is your calories, your macros, your training, the needs, which stands for the non-exercise activity thermogenesis, the recovery, the stress management, everything that we go over at Heartletics when it comes to these 7 essential fat loss habits for success. But Mark, that was very, very nicely done, brother. I appreciate you sharing all the details. If you guys are watching this on YouTube, I'm going to have at the bottom somewhere here a little cue card that you can just simply click on to be redirected to watch a full-blown video that I went over, going over all the different supplements, the good ones, the bad ones, the ones that are not really necessary, and the ones that are a complete waste of money. And for those of you guys that are tuning in live right now or listening on Spotify, iTunes, or even in the Facebook group, I appreciate you guys tuning in. And as always, this has been Coach Joe, Coach Mark with Heartletics.com. We'll talk to you guys next time. Peace out, Girl Scouts.